have a very special guest speaker. She is from right here in Fremont, Nebraska. Her name is Becky Horton, and she is my wife, and I am so thankful that she has agreed to do this on a day when many moms take the day off maybe, or take some time off and rest and relax. A few months ago, I asked her if she would be willing to speak, and she graciously said yes. And I want to tell you a few things about Becky. 13 years ago, she graduated from Indiana Wesleyan University with a degree in nursing. And for 11 of those 13 years, she worked in behavioral health nursing, working with adults and adolescents throughout those years. And when we moved here to Fremont, she is still a registered nurse, worked in a couple of different positions, but now she works as a coordinator with some of the nonprofit basic needs organizations in our city. And so she does a lot of work there. And she is not only an incredible wife, puts up with someone like me, she's an incredible mom, and she's just an all-around beautiful person, both on the outside and on the in. So would you welcome her this morning to our second gathering?
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here with you today and to get to share. The last time he let me speak on the stage was like 4 or 5 years ago, so I've waited a long time for this. I'm sure some of you think that today is like your grand opportunity to take a little nap. And I would encourage you to do something different than you normally do when Joe or Aaron speaks, and that's to stay awake. All right? All right? Because I think this is for you. I think this day is for you. I think it's for me. I think it's for us to listen and to learn. And one of my favorite sayings comes from a TV show that I used to watch. It's a song on there, and it says, "It's not where you come from, it's where you belong." And I think you belong here. And you belong here today. And whether you came with someone that's very dear to you, whether you're having a great weekend, whether you're missing someone today, or whether you wish you weren't even here, I think you belong here. And so I want to jump in because I know that some of you are waiting for stories on Aaron. I know that you're like waiting for me to like dish it out all these great stories because he always talks about me, which is super annoying. And so I'm going to talk about him. I actually don't have a lot of time to talk about him. He gave me a really weird time limit this morning. And so, I have to follow within this really short little period of time to speak today. So I don't have time to tell you about how Aaron is kind of famous for, putting his wallet and his phone on top of the car and then driving off and everything flies everywhere. All right? I don't have time to tell you about how he has hit our garage with my Ford Focus and knocked the mirror off twice. All right? We don't have time to hit on all of Aaron's weird injuries, most of them happening last summer, like when he got clocked in the eye with a softball and it busted his cheekbone, or he degloved his thumb right back there in that doorway with a scissor lift, right? Too soon? Is that too soon to talk about? All right. So we don't have time to talk about all those stories, but I do want to tell you something about Aaron today. I want to tell you how Aaron appears in my phone, in my cell phone. All right. So in your phone, everybody has a list of favorites, or maybe you do. The favorites are like your people, right? They're like your people that you call on a pretty regular basis that you don't want to have to dig through your phone to find them. They're your people. Well, at the top of my people list is Aaron, all right? And I have Aaron listed in my phone as Aaron the Great, all right? Aaron the Great shows up every time I call him or he calls me. And I have him in my phone that way very specifically, all right? He's in there as Aaron the Great for a very specific reason. And it's because I want to remember that I think Aaron is great, or that I thought Aaron was great at one point, right? Okay? Because as we know, sometimes phones can be very annoying. Like if you're trying to get a hold of somebody, all right, I have a flat tire. I've called Aaron 14 times. He is not answering. I want to remember that he's Aaron the Great, right? Or if maybe I'm in the doctor's office and I can't answer my phone, and Aaron is calling me over and over again. He just keeps calling. And finally, he maybe pages me or something really annoying. All right, I want to remember that he's Aaron the Great. I have him as Aaron the Great in my phone because I love Aaron. All right, and I want to remember that at one point I did love him if I'm mad at him, okay? I want to remember that he is someone that I love. And so we're going to spend time, spoiler alert, talking about love today. We're going to talk about how we can love other people well. And we're going to talk about how we can tear down things in our lives that prevent us from loving those around us well. So this time of year, I get super excited, all right? I talk super fast, but I'm going to really talk fast right now because I love this time of year because I get to plant all my flowers, all right? I love to plant. I like to plant in my garden. I like to plant all of my pots that I grow. I consider them like my babies, and I kind of talk to them like at night when I'm watering them. It makes me feel really happy to be out in my garden. So like I always, at this point in my life now, wait until Mother's Day to plant, Mother's Day weekend. Because it's like maybe an old wives' tale or something that somebody told me, my grandma or my mom, a long time ago, when they said you need to wait till Mother's Day, because that's like that magical day where stuff's not going to freeze anymore, all right? Like, if you wait till then everything's going to be okay because the weather's going to be nice and you're going to be okay. It's really hard for me to wait, but I've been waiting. So today's my day. You should all be really happy about that for me because today's my day, all right? But when we lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we had been married for 2 years, and we bought our first house. And I got really excited because it was my first time to get to plant my own garden. I had grown up, in my parents' home. We lived on a farm. We planted a big garden every year. My mom loved to plant flowers. My dad planted trees. I helped him with that. But when I married Aaron and we moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, I got to plant my own garden when we moved into our first house. And so I was super excited. I went out really early, like as soon as they put the plants in the stores, and I bought all these plants, okay? I think I picked up another shift at the hospital just so that I could afford these plants that I was going to buy, okay? Because I really wanted to plant plants in my garden. I went out and I bought all these plants and I planted them everywhere around my whole house. I planted my garden, I planted all of the plants around the house, and I went back inside super proud of myself because I had this beautiful situation happening outside, put my feet up, started watching the news, and it was going to freeze that night. So then I ran around my house collecting every sheet in the entire house. And I went around and covered all of those plants, all right, that night, so that they would survive, so that they would continue to grow and they would continue to be beautiful, all right? I did not want them to die because I had worked too hard, and Aaron was not going to let me buy more, and I did not want to take the time to plant more because I'd already put all that time and effort into planting them, all right? I had worked so hard. There's a lot of work that goes into maintaining a garden. There's a lot of work that goes into making beautiful things and making beautiful plants and helping them to grow. There's also a lot of things that want to tear those down, all right? There's weather. There's animals, right? If my dog eats my plants this year, he is gone, all right? Anybody want a dog? All right, because I love my plants, all right? And I've worked too hard, but there's a lot of things that want to tear my plants down, that are going to want to, I'm going to have to pay attention. I'm going to have to tend my plants. I'm going to have to pay attention. And I've found that patience, that waiting, that paying attention is really key as I tend my garden. So Aaron started the conversation 2 weeks ago about what we're going to continue today. He started talking about the vine and the branches. It was part of a bigger series that we've been in since Easter called Finding Jesus. All right, and in this series, we've led up to, this is the last weekend of that series, and 2 weeks ago, Aaron talked about the vine and the branches in John 15, and he started the conversation. Now, he talked about the vine and the branches, but in those first 8 verses of John 15, it doesn't talk about the vine and the branches in terms of love. It talks about the vine and the branches in terms of Jesus, in terms of us, but doesn't mention the word love. However, today, as we move forward in those verses, we're going to go to the next 8 or 9 verses, and we're going to talk about it, but it's talking about the vine and the branches, but now love's in the equation, all right? And love is part of the talk, and it's interpreting in terms of love. So I'm going to read to you out of the Message today, out of the Message version of the Bible, because it's a version that I love. It's not a special version. You all may read different versions, and that's okay. But it's something that makes sense to me. All right. It's kind of in street language, and it's it's a way that I like to read. And so, if you want to follow along, you can follow along in your own version, and the verses will be on the screen. All right. So in John 15, 9 through 17, it says, "I've loved you the way that my Father has loved me. Make yourselves at home in my love. If you keep my commands, you'll remain intimately at home in my love. That's what I've done, kept my Father's commands and made myself at home in his love." Verse 11 says, "I've told you these things for a purpose, that my joy might be your joy and your joy wholly mature. This is my command, love one another the way I loved you. This is the very best way to love. Put your life on the line for your friends. You are my friends when you do the things I command you. I am no longer calling you servants because servants don't understand what their master is thinking and planning. No, I've named you friends because I've let you in on everything I've heard from the Father. You didn't choose me. Remember, I chose you and put you in the world to bear fruit, fruit that won't spoil. As fruit bearers, whatever you ask the Father in relation to me, he gives you. But remember the root command, love one another. I love this version because it says, make yourselves at home in my love. All right, other versions say things like, abide in my love, have patience, wait. Okay, that's what your version may say in the Bible that you're holding. This says, make yourself at home in my love. That makes sense to me, right? Patience, wait, those words are not in my vocabulary. All right, I don't do those well. I don't. But make yourselves at home, my love. That sounds like a dearly loved friend. That sounds like a very beloved family member that's invited you over, asked you to sit down like in their easy chair, and, like offered you maybe a blanket if it's cold in there, and you get all cozy. You're making yourselves at home in his love. The other line that sticks out to me is put your life on the line for your friends. This is a reference to God giving the life of his son. And these commandments, okay, love one another, put your life on the line for your friends. They're not like general scattered like to the wind. No, they're like super specific. They're very focused commands, right? Love one another. Doesn't really get a lot simpler than that, right? In theory. Except for in reality, sometimes that's the thing that we struggle with the most, if you're really honest with yourself. So Jesus is actually speaking to his disciples in these verses, okay? So this is like the time period right before before they're doing like the first communion, before they're having their dinner together at the table. And he's preparing them because he knows that the day is coming quickly when he's going to go to the cross, all right? And it's going to be really, really hard on these people. These are his people, okay? We talked about people earlier. These are his people. And he knows this day is going to be really hard on them because it's coming very soon. And so the commands that he's wanting his disciples to follow, these love one another, put your life on the line for your friends, he's not just like throwing these out there like he's never done these before. These are things that he's already modeled or he's getting ready to model very soon. All right, these are things that he's already done. He's not asking them to do something he hasn't already done. All right, he's modeled these already with his Father, the way he's made it himself at home in his Father's love, the way that he's preparing to give his life for his friends. So the question that comes up is this. If Jesus could lay down his life for us because of love, what's keeping us from experiencing that same love? That phrase is a little bit hard to wrap your brain around, okay, honestly. Like, lay down your life for your friends. It's not very often that we actually have, like, an opportunity to lay down our life for someone every day, right? I mean, that's a pretty rare opportunity. So it's easy to say, well, I don't have to do that. But he's talking about it in terms of giving yourself up for other people, all right? Thinking of others more highly than yourself, all right? And he's putting this out there as this type of love that's there for the people. What's getting in the way of you living that kind of love? Are you allowing your life to be filled with other things that are tearing down that love? Things like prejudice. Things like unforgiveness. Or control. Ooh, I like control, right? Selfishness. Envy of other people or other situations. Material goods. Things that other people have. Hatred. Reputation. Convenience. Ooh, we don't like to be inconvenienced, do we? Safety. Safety can go hand in hand with fear. If we allow these things to take root in our lives and to become the focus of our lives, they become the focus of our love. And they can become idols in our lives. So for much of my adult life, especially since I've become a parent, I've let a lot of these things control my life. All right, I guess you could say they've trumped love, that they've smashed some of the beautiful areas that I've worked so hard to tend to and grow. I've been given grace and love so many times, but I continue to bow to these idols, sometimes over and over and over again. Control, reputation, success, convenience, rest. Ooh, rest. That's important, right? What about when you don't have rest and you respond in anger? Traditions. Oh, I like traditions. I really do. I call myself a creature of habit. But when traditions become more important than the people, and they become the focus of your love, safety, family and friends, these aren't bad things, right? They're not all bad. Some of these, I'm sure most of you would argue, are super good. These are really good things. But when they take the place of God in our lives, the order gets all out of whack. when family becomes more important to you than God, then it's time to take a step back. Slowly and carefully, these supposedly very good things can really creep into our inner circle. All right? And my go-to emotion when these things start taking over my life, it's definitely not love. It's anger. It's frustration at people, at circumstances. And usually these things, because they start out super good and because we think that they're good things, some of them to start with, they infiltrate so slowly that it's really, really hard to recognize them in our lives. It's really hard to identify idols in our lives unless you're paying attention, unless you're really looking at what is happening. If you love anything more than God, then you miss getting to show others the true love of God. If you love your family, which is a very good thing, more than God, you are not going to show your family the love that God wants you to show them. Instead of grace or love, when my cute little daughter loses her ever-loving mind to the park, instead of showing her grace and love, instead of responding to her and maybe even disciplining her out of grace and love, I respond sometimes out of anger or embarrassment, right? And then I'm bowing to my idols of control, of reputation, of how other people see me. Sometimes at night, my son calls for one more drink of water. Mom! And instead of responding to this dearly loved person in my life out of care and love, I respond out of resentment or frustration. And I bow to my idols of rest, my idols of comfort. I'm sitting in my easy chair with my blanket on. I don't want to get up. How many times have I put my focus on these idols? Thing is that it's really frustrating. This is the part that's a real kicker, is that the people around you you're going to find are not going to be bowing to the same idols. All right? Everybody's got their own idols going on. So they're not going to necessarily be bowing to your idols. And that can be really frustrating, and that instead of responding out of love to those people, we're going to continue to respond out of anger and frustration. So I was looking for a definition of an idol that would really make sense, that really went with what we were talking about today. And I found one by author Tim Keller. And I think it's on the screen for you. Tim Keller defines an idol as anything that's more important to you than God. Anything that absorbs your heart and imagination more than God. Anything that you seek to give you what only God can give. Is anything that you look at in life and think, if I have that, my life will have value. Or I'll know my life has meaning, or I'll feel significant or secure. Idols can cause us to be really upset when they're threatened. And I found that like close relationships, like the people, it could be the people you're sitting next to, or the people that you live with, people that you work with. Those relationships have a really good way of threatening your idols. All right, parenting takes it to a whole new level for me. Because I found that my control, my idol of rest, my idol of convenience are threatened like on an hourly, sometimes minute-by-minute basis. Okay? The people that are closest to you are going to threaten your idols. That's how you can identify them sometimes. Sometimes we get mad at our children, not because they've broken like the Ten Commandments or like God's law. They probably didn't even break an actual civil law, all right? But maybe they broke the law of peace and comfort in our lives. I think this could speak to anybody who's ever had close family member relationships, okay? Family can bring a lot of pride to our lives, right? We feel real proud of our family members sometimes, but they can also bring a lot of humiliation and a lot of embarrassment. Who hasn't felt humiliated when someone offered you unsolicited parenting advice when your kid was losing it in the grocery store? Or felt embarrassed when someone offered you marriage advice when things weren't going super great? Right? It can cause a lot of humiliation sometimes. And these types of situations can bring reactions of anger, bring reactions of resentment. If we allow our children's, our spouses, our friends, our family members' behaviors to cause us to have a reaction that's not covered in love, then we may need to tear down some idols. Sometimes I get angry with a coworker, not because they broke like a rule in the employee handbook, right? But because they may have gotten in the way of our reputation or our success. If we allow bitterness to take root in our lives and we're not showing love, then we may need to tear down some of those idols. There seems to be something like super ingrained in our human nature that has a really hard time being happy for the success of others, right? Social media does not help the situation. Facebook, Instagram, constantly seeing things that people are doing or getting or having or looking like, right? It's really hard not to compare yourself to other people. If we're always focusing on everyone else, it's really, really easy to be judgmental and to get our focus off of God. Our reaction to others' behavior usually actually doesn't have a lot to do with us being concerned over their current relationship with God. It has a lot more to do a lot of times with how irritated we are that they may be disrupting or threatening our idols. So we've talked a lot about idols. What does this look like? What are they? How do you identify idols in your own life? It's real easy for me to identify idols in other people's lives. Like Aaron, I can identify idols in Aaron's life, right? But myself? How do I identify idols in my own life? So pay attention to your negative emotional responses. Okay, what causes you to get really angry? Imagine that there's a rope, all right? You have a negative emotional response to something. Follow that rope all the way back. What's being really threatened? What's really being threatened? Why are you reacting the way that you're reacting? Only then can you actually identify the things in your life that you've placed your focus in, your focus on, your idols. And only then can you ask for actual help tearing down those idols, because sometimes you can't do it on your own. It can be really difficult. It's very difficult to tear down idols on your own because sometimes they're so ingrained in your nature or so ingrained in your life that it's even hard to recognize them. On the flip side, identify what you put your hope in when things are going really well in your life. Maybe some of you are living great lives right now, right? But if it's not the grace of God that you're putting your hope in, then you're worshiping an idol. If you think life is only worth living because your family's healthy, or because you got a work promotion, or because you got a new car, I would encourage you to take some time to reflect. What's most important to you? It's really, really difficult, okay? Idols are difficult to break down because family, careers, those things are all really important, right? We all want stability. We all want safety. These things are all really important. But what's most important? If it's not God, you need to honestly identify that maybe even some really good things in your life could be potential idols. Start paying attention when you compare yourself to other people. When you start thinking that the grass is greener, because it's not, start paying attention to what you're focused in, because when you put your hope in anything but Jesus, you may need to tear down some idols. Idols are very, very difficult to overcome sometimes. They're not easy to tear down because some of them, when they start out as good things, they slowly creep into becoming our focus. Really difficult to get past that and to tear that down. But Jesus says, abide. He says, make yourself at home in my love. Make yourself at home in my love. And he wants to help us. We can't do it without him. So if you've talked to me at all in the last 2 months or so, I may or may not have told you that I love The Greatest Showman. All right, it's a new show. All right, I own 2 copies of it actually, and I've actually loaned them out to people because I love it so much. All right, it's a new movie that's been out. All right, it's based on the true life story of the beginning of the Barnum and Bailey Circus, and it's about how Phineas T. Barnum saw value in people who were marginalized. People who are on the fringe of society, people who did not have a voice. It's like super colorful and imaginative. I know there's a picture up here on the screen. It's a celebration of humanity, and you can see that from the screen. All right, it's a celebration of all kinds of different people from different walks of life. It has great examples of looking past ourselves and giving true love to other people and seeing other people with true love. Okay, so there's like a fantastic soundtrack with it. The music is really good. The dancing is amazing because they've like incorporated hip hop and different dance like into the late 1800s type of dancing too. So it's just a really fun. It's imaginative, it's colorful, and the costumes are beautiful. But the most striking part of the movie is about how Phineas T. Barnum, learns how to love others. Such a simple concept, right? He appears to care about what he calls and what other people call the oddities of society. all right? But he's made power and reputation his idols. He claims to care about these people, okay? These people that he's brought into his world, brought into his circus that he's created. But they see right through him, all right? And in the end, the people that he's betrayed, these people that he has betrayed, they actually are the ones that want to help him. They give him another chance. They abide with him even through the mess that he's created, and even when they're all left with nothing. And I think it's a really great parallel to how God wants to help us. He wants us to be at home in his love, even when we cheapen that love, even when we bow to our idols. He wants to help us even when we struggle to show his love to other people, and even as we struggle to love ourselves sometimes. He gives us grace for times when we feel like we failed, and grace for times when we keep building the same idols over and over and over again. There's grace for that. Grace made possible by his love for us. P.T. Barnum, he saw diversity, okay? He saw the diverse people that he was working with. He actually embraced it. He brought them into his world. But he also monopolized on it, and then he was accused of exploiting the diverse. He learned that love is greater than power and reputation and status, and that no matter what other people think about you, how you think about yourself is key. At the end of the movie, I'm going to spoil this for you, but you should watch it anyway. He makes a choice, all right? He chooses love. Like, he chooses love, and he chooses love over power and reputation, and he chooses to give love to people, especially those closest to him. And he continues to celebrate humanity, all right? The humanity that gave him such joy and brought such beauty to the world. Love was enough for him, and love is enough to trust God to bring down our idols. Love is enough. I want to read you a quote real fast by author Gray Boyd. He writes, "For the church to lack love is for the church to lack everything. No heresy can conceivably be worse. Until the culture at large instinctively identifies us as loving, humble servants, and until the tax collectors and prostitutes of our day are beating down our doors to hang out with us as they did with Jesus, we have every reason to accept our culture's judgment of us as correct. We are indeed more Pharisaic than we are Christ-like." If you're here today and you're a follower of Jesus, if you claim to have a relationship with Jesus or you want to know Jesus, I hope that you spend some time discerning whether or not the greatest commands are actually commands in your life, if they're the most important commandments in your life. If you're feeling angry or ashamed, embarrassed, left out, uncomfortable, or stubborn, you're not alone. There's grace for you, and there's grace for me. I'm not talking about this today because I think that you're the only ones that need to hear it. I'm talking about this today because this is something that I am dealing with in my own life. All right, I'm tearing down my idols daily too. All right, you've heard some of my idols. What are yours? You see, when I focus on my idols, it's difficult to see past the day-to-day irritations that happen. It's real difficult to see past emotions or hardships that come along in our lives. It's difficult to see the humanity that's right in front of us. When I focus on the faults of other people and get real focused on other people or get focused on my own personal agenda, it's really hard to celebrate diversity in people. It's real hard to celebrate the humanity that's there around us. Maybe you need to work in your garden today. Maybe you need to tear down some idols. Maybe you need to ask God to forgive you for making reputation or success or control or safety or others' behavior idols in your life. Maybe before you can actually start tearing those idols down, you actually need to identify what your idols even are. And maybe you need to identify some negative responses. Maybe you've even had some this week that you can follow it back, all the way back to the source, all the way back to that source of what you are focusing on. We all have idols at some point in our lives. Every single one of us in this room have some sort of idol we've been bowing down to or have bowed down to in the past. But we have a really big God who's abiding. He's waiting for us, and he wants us to be at home in his love. We can't love others until we tear down our idols. Not the way that God wants us to. And until we love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And only then can we actually love others the way that God has intended for us to, or the way that God loves them. I'm going to have you stand with me for a minute, please. I have a few questions for you. You can take a posture that's comfortable to you. If you want to close your eyes, that'd be fine. What idols can you identify in your life? Is there anything even growing in your garden right now? What negative responses have you had this week? Can you follow that negative response back to the source? And if you do, is God's love enough for you? Do you humanize people or do you devalue them? And how can you love others better? Dear God, I thank you for today. Thank you for loving us, for modeling for us what love really looks like. I pray that you'd help us as we look to see what things are taking the focus in our life and what areas we need to tear down so that we can love others better, so that we can love others the way that you do. I pray that you help us be honest with ourselves. You help us take our focus off other people. You'd help us to really look at the things in our lives that may be taking precedent over you. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for modeling that love for us, and thank you for helping us to go and love others. In your name.